Louis-Philippe Scolari's spokesman has confirmed that the Brazilian has been approached about the manager's job at Manchester City. City owner Thaksin Shinawatra is widely expected to sack Sven-Göran Eriksson this summer. Wigan youngsters Sam Tompkins and Mark Flanagan have signed new contracts with the Super League club, and the Irish Rugby Football Union have named Munster's Declan Kidney as their new head coach.
BBC Radio Manchester, satellite weather with Diane Oxbury.
Well, it looks just about perfect as we speak. Blue sky all the way. Temperatures are rising very, very nicely. We're already in the mid-60s. Through the afternoon, you'll hang on to the sunshine, but we're adding to the mix the possibility of a couple of showers. They could be heavy, they could be slow-moving, but your top temperature, it's undented, 24 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
I refuse to do it publicly, but you and I, we both do it. And there's naught to be said. That's it, we do. We do it with money as well. 24 Celsius. See, you're doing it now. So am I, don't worry. No, I don't. You just have to do it. 24, multiply that by 2, that's 48. Then you add 32, that's 78. That's quite warm, isn't it? That's what you do. That'll be £1.28. 28. What's 28? That's 25 bob. Exactly. We all do it. There's nothing we do. The world's being taken over by young people. It's an outrage and a scandal. We'll just have to live with it and then, before all that long, die with it. Oh, it's an outrage. Such is life. If you want to join us, you can talk about absolutely anything. The subject matter is yours. I will no doubt have a conversation with you about it, but we'll talk about anything. We don't care. We have no shame. Very few rules, and some of them get broken. Weird. Anyway, if you want to text, 07786206951. If you want to email, it's radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. And if you want to telephone, which is, in truth, is my preferred means of communication for this at least, 0161 228 2255. And we'll kick off, if we may, with Arthur in Sale. Hi, Arthur.
Hello, Alan. Just wanted to ask your advice or your opinion. What is the benefits of buying a second-hand car on with a credit card?
The benefit?
Is there any?
Yes, in simple terms. The benefit is, if you pay by credit card or some other credit process, then the credit provider is as liable for the provision of your rights as is the supplier of the vehicle, providing it's a trade agreement, of course.
Yes, trade.
Well, that's the simple answer to your question. If you're a consumer and you go to Allan Beswick's second-hand wreck shop and you pay by credit card, then what you're entitled to from me, the provider of the vehicle, you are also entitled from the provider of the consumer credit.
And in what way will that work, though? If there's something faulty with the car or there's something...
That's the way it should work, yes. The reason I'm hedging is because it's not a new vehicle, it's second-hand. Yeah. You're not entitled to any more from your credit card company than you would be from your garage. But what you're entitled to from the purveyor, the seller of the car, is that the vehicle be fit for the purpose that it was purchased, providing that purpose was obvious or specifically declared at the time.
And supposing you drove away within 2 days, the gearbox fell to bits.
That probably would entitle you to a repair, probably, and if you paid by credit card, if the garage went bust or if the garage refused to do it and you decided that you would sue, then you could equally, jointly and severally if you like, sue the credit provider.
Right, so would the credit provider put the problem right?
Well, they wouldn't put it right. I don't suppose Access and Visa, not MasterCard and Visa, I don't suppose they employ many mechanics. But then,
no, I mean, pay to put it right, sorry.
Yes, if you are entitled to that. That's the important thing. So what a credit card doesn't do, is give you any more rights. It replicates the rights with a second organisation. And the second organisation is one with a hell of a lot of money.
Right. What would you buy a second-hand car on a credit card, Alan?
That would depend. First of all, I've not bought a second-hand car for a long time, he said rather flashily. But that would depend on the deal itself. Because, of course, if you're buying a second-hand car on credit card, the garage may well want you to pay a percentage increase.
It's 3%.
Right, well, it's different in each place, and often it's negotiable. But yes, the garage will say, our prices are advertised for cash sale. But, if you pay by credit card, then we will charge you what it costs us, or an administration charge or whatever.
And just one last final thing on this. You put a deposit down on a car. This is somebody else, because I threw this problem by a friend last night, and it just went further and further. Another scenario came up. If you put a deposit down on the said car using a credit card, and you sign the necessary to say that you'll have this car and you've entered a contract, and then change your mind the next day, will the credit card reimburse you?
Not if the garage isn't required to.
Right.
Remember, all it does, it doesn't change the rights. It merely replicates them with another provider. So if you place a deposit and there are no declared conditions of your placing that deposit, then it is assumed that that deposit, if you don't go ahead with the sale, is lost. Whether you pay it by credit card or anything else, the rules are the same. It's lost. The idea of a deposit, the thing to remember about the word deposit is it's not that long a word, but what it actually means is this is money that you can keep if I change my mind. That's what the word deposit means.
All right. Okay.
So if you give somebody a deposit and then change your mind, the deposit is his. It's not refundable.
Right.
Otherwise, what would be the point?
Yeah, absolutely.
None
All right,
whatsoever. All right.
Thanks very much, Alan.
Have a good day. 0161 228 2255. It's just after 12:10. You can join us if you wish. You don't have to have a second-hand car to sell or indeed to buy. I've not bought a second-hand car for a long time. And I keep my cars for 3.5 years. That's 3 years that's protected by the sort of guarantee you get with it with a new car these days. And then 6 months when I'm prepared to run the risk of having to pay the bill myself. Isn't that terrible? Chris in Shevington. Hiya, Chris.
Good afternoon, Mr. Beswick.
Good day to you.
I'm a bit fed up at present, or at least I was until about a day or two ago. See, I'm a Wigan Rugby League supporter, and I'm a Labour voter. So as you can gather, times are not very good
no, indeed not. No, there's not a lot of joy in that, is there?
But whilst I was fortunately away on a little jaunt the other day, I received some good news, and that was that Boris Johnson had been elected Mayor of London. And I thought, well, this is marvellous, because as sure as eggs is eggs, from now on, Labour's fortunes are going to start to steadily climb. Wouldn't you agree?
I'll wait and see. I'm a man who has quite a bit of respect for Boris Johnson, so I'm not sure.
Let me tell you my point of view.
Please do.
If you've got a chap in charge of such an enormous area of the country, the most densely populated part of the country, such an important part of the country that it is in fact the capital of the country, who thinks that by putting young people in some sort of boot camp for a weekend is going to make them change their ways, then I think that points to the fact that the fella is seriously misguided and really drastically lacking in judgment. And it makes me wonder how on earth the people of London actually voted for him in the first place. I can only conclude that it must have been some sort of protest vote against Labour.
Well, that's perfectly possible. It may even have been a protest vote against Ken Livingstone. Maybe they got sick to the back teeth of the
Could well have been. But I think ultimately what's going to happen is he's going to make such a monstrous mess of the role of being Mayor of London that it's going to reflect really badly on his leader, Cameron, because people are going to turn around and say, hang on a minute, we've got a fella here, an old Etonian and so on, who has been elected as Mayor of London, and he's made an absolute muck-up of it.
Well, Chris, the words I hear you saying match almost verbatim the words that were said by leading leading Tory figures when Ken Livingstone was first elected. They said, well, you know, we've not won.
Oh, don't get me wrong, Alan.
But at least they've given it to a clown.
One to fix to mend another. But what I'm saying is, people's memories are so short that what they will do is they will remember the way that Boris has underperformed, shall we say.
Well, one is
badly on Mr. Cameron.
One is forced to point out the flaw in your statement.
Go on, then.
And that is the statement predicts that Boris will fail.
I think he will.
Well, indeed, but that's more opinion than anything we can stand up at the moment. The reality...
This whole programme's about opinions, isn't it?
Indeed it is, but what I'm pointing out to you is that whilst you sit there and think comfortably, this is fantastic, it'll be good for Labour...
I'm not sitting, I'm standing.
I have no way of knowing that unless you reveal, but it was a presumption of mine, and I apologise. I didn't think anybody stood when they were on the phone, but there you are. Any road, the reality is that if he does well... the exact opposite may be the case.
But
I don't think he's going to cock up. Do you know what he's declared this morning?
My important point. A fellow with such lamentable judgment as to believe that a failed policy such as boot camps.
Well,
what chance has he got of succeeding?
I don't know, but I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing that is announced this morning. Now, he's not yet in a position to implement this, but it's one of his early targets, I think is how we would define it. He's announced this morning that he will ban alcohol on all the stations and bus stations in his control. That's an awful lot of that. Well, of course you do. I don't know anyone that doesn't. So that's his first step. Now, Livingstone's had 8 years and never bothered, but that's his first step. That's one of the things he's going to do, as near as is politically immediate.
Yeah,
so,
Livingstone's strengths lay in other areas of political concern, other than just being bothered about the behaviour of young people and street crime and so on. Mr. Johnson, rightly or wrongly, seems to have taken it upon himself to decide that this is of tantamount importance in people's views, and I'm not so sure it is.
Well, we shall see, is all I can say. We shall see.
Tantamount, or is it paramount?
Well, it could be either. It could be either. Both would suffice. Paramount is his principal one. Tantamount is what he's possibly going to do. It's almost a simile.
Just to finally sum up, he's got enough rope to hang himself, and he will do.
Indeed, he's got enough rope. He's got plenty of rope to hang himself. I'm tempted to suggest that he'll do at least as good a job as Livingstone, because this job is absolutely crucial to his view of his future. And his view of his future is to be a Conservative Prime Minister.
Who, Boris is?
Yeah.
Good God almighty, please, no, don't.
Well,
you knew him quite well, but oh dear me, oh no.
Well, there you are.
Oh no. We are not going back to the days of the Reform Club. And
I'm afraid I've given you the nightmare for this evening.
No.
Your nightmare has been issued. I'm afraid that, as by what all his friends are saying, and some of them are people he was at university and the like with, people are saying...
They would say that, wouldn't they?
Well, they're not saying he will be. They are saying that he has charted his course from day one with the sole objective of becoming a Conservative Prime Minister.
Well, once again, that points to the fact that his judgment is lamentable.
Well, stranger things have happened. We shall see. Good on you anyway. Yeah. Cheers, Chris. 0161 228 2255. If you want to join us, fine. A cabinet minister admitted that Labour faced a difficult few days today. Who was he? Our own dear Andy Burnham, the MP for Lee. Culture Secretary also. The Prime Minister's been under attack from some backbenchers, of course, after huge losses in last week's local election and continuing concern over the abolition of the 10p tax rate. Well, Andy Burnham says that campaigning for the elections was a salutary lesson. You see, the trouble with a lot of politicians who are in Parliament at the moment, my apologies, a lot of Labour politicians in Parliament at the moment, they've never suffered defeat. They've never been in the position whereby they turn up on somebody's front door and they get spat at, rather like the Conservative politicians did at the end of Thatcher's reign and then onwards through the 2 bites of Major. So they've never experienced that. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with that. They've had a comfortable ride thus far of the new Broom Labour group. We'll see. Of course, our own patch, if you stretch it wide enough, Crewe and Nantwich has a general election, a parliamentary election. I think it's in 2 weeks' time, isn't it? That will be interesting to see where that goes. 0161 228 2255. You don't have to talk politics. You can talk about anything. They're looking for a new chief constable for Greater Manchester. Of course they are. Presumably one with control of his willy.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
The government's official advisers say cannabis should remain a Class C drug, but the BBC understands ministers will reject this and make it a Class B one. It's believed a gunman killed after a standoff with police in London yesterday was a barrister. And international aid's beginning to reach Burma, where at least 22,000 people have been killed in a devastating cyclone. At least 40,000 are still missing. Manchester's weather warm and sunny, highs of 24 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
Restrictions continue in the Oldham area on Broadway on the A663 around Hunt Lane. Restrictions in force now until around about the 9th of June. Whilst those roadworks continue either side of the carriageway, do expect delays, especially during the evening peak. It does tend to get fairly busy around the Broadway area. In Stockport, Heaton Moor Road again down to one lane either side of the carriageway. Temporary traffic lights in force whilst gas maintenance work gets underway between Broomfield Road and Tatton Road South. These are long-term with us now until April of next year. And in Tintwistle, Manchester Road on the A628 near Crossgate Lane looking slightly delayed between Hollingworth and Tintwistle because of roadworks and temporary traffic lights in the area. Now don't forget, if you can update me on anything you've heard, do call in. Make sure it's hands-free before you dial, and the number you need is 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Today is the day, of course. It's Wednesday, so there's Prime Minister's question times. Yes, we like those. Yeah. So, Prime Minister Gordon Brown was accused by the Tory leader, David Cameron, today of losing touch with reality after telling MPs that Scottish Labour leader Wendy Alexander had not called for an immediate referendum on Scottish independence. So there. Prime Minister Gordon Brown faced the Tories and claims his post-local election promise to listen was just empty words. That's what the Tories say of him. Oh, this is joyous. Conservative leader David Cameron said the Prime Minister has got nothing to sell and he's useless at selling it. Which is nice. We like that, yeah. Nothing to sell and useless at selling. I bet that got a few guffaws. Mr Brown told him there was no substance in any of your questions and said the public faced the choice between a Labour government that delivers and a Conservative party that just talks. There's nice. And the Liberal Democrat leader, Nick Clegg, said the government's moves to compensate those by the 10p hit by the 10p tax rate abolition were not good enough. Which is a bit rich, because I don't think anyone knows what they are yet, but never mind. But David Cameron today accused the Prime Minister of having no coherent vision for the country after Labour's mauling in the local elections last week. In a rowdy Commons question time exchanges, Mr Cameron said the government was lurching from one relaunch to another. What's missing is what is really needed. That is a clear vision and some strong leadership for Britain. Well, there you are. All that hot air and not a word said, in my view, but there you are. Well, they don't appear to have done. They've not said anything. One said, Yabu sucks to you, I don't like the cut of your jib, and the other one says, ooh, Yabu sucks to you, I don't like the cut of your jib either. Dear God, it's pointless, isn't it? Innit? The whole palaver is pointless, but such is life. 0161 228 2255. There is a suggestion in a number of newspapers today, including The Express, if I can find it, there it is, that the police are being politicised. That's the term. Labour face fresh accusations of politicising the police last night over a plan to use Britain's leading anti-terrorism officer to persuade MPs of the need to extend detention without charge. This is the 42 days rule. And Police Minister Tony McNulty has arranged for the Metropolitan Police's Assistant Commissioner, Bob Quick, to brief MPs. Now, the row comes as Gordon Brown faces a Labour rebellion and Commons defeat over plans for the power to hold terror suspects for 42 days without charge. Do you think the police are politicised? We heard this, the last time I heard it said loudly and emphatically was during the second of the big miners' strikes, when the streets of our country were closed down, when the police were used to protect and implement the policies of the then government, which was, of course, Margaret Thatcher. Now, they're accused then of becoming political pawns, if you will, and many police officers quietly and privately said much the same thing. They felt they were being used as the agents of the Prime Minister rather than as the local police force that they are supposed to be. But are the police politicised? They are. They're not under the control of the local authorities, although there is, of course, in Greater Manchester, as there is everywhere else, a police body, like the old Watch Committee, but rather bigger and more powerful, but a political body that deals with the police, and indeed they're the political body that's advertising now for a new what you might call police chief for Greater Manchester. He or she will be appointed by the police authority. So there is some politic in policing, but is it straightforward? Good morning, Alan. NHS check-up. I had one earlier this year and had to buy both blood and urine samples. Sadly, this is when I was introduced to Dr. Jellyfinger, who attempted to go where no one's been before. However, during the examination, and I suppose as way of breaking the ice, he said just before bringing tears to my eyes, obviously I don't make too many friends carrying out this procedure. I mean, it's not as though as a small child I ever went on one of those trips with the church or have been in prison, but I admit I squealed like a pig. So there you are. He says it was probably the most painful thing he's ever experienced. All I can say is you've led a protected life. If that's the most painful thing you've had, then frankly, you've done all right. You've got a very, very long way without much pain, I can tell you. But there you are. Having broken various bits of my body over the years, I'm afraid I know of things that hurt a lot more than that, because I've had to endure it myself. Doherty's out of prison. I knew you'd be pleased. I did. He's out. He's out. They're all going mad. The papers are saying, what's he doing coming out so early? What harm's he ever done? I'm trying to find it now, but they've said he's out early and they're not pleased. Yeah. But I do accept that he's a scally. You know, he's a drug user and drug abuser and all the rest of it. But frankly, he's not done anyone any harm, has he? So which crackpot let Pete out early, it says in The Sun. Anger as Junkie is released. Junkie rocker Pete Doherty was let out of prison early yesterday to the fury of anti-drug campaigners. Doherty, 29, served only 29 days, a day a year, 29 days of a 14-week sentence for failing to turn up for court drug tests. Well, you just think, all right, he's balmy. There's no question. He's a feckless, useless sort of a person, really. But prison, I enjoyed it when they sent him down. I thought, well, he deserves that. But maybe he's learnt his lesson now. Maybe he has. And so that's fine. He's done his time, or some of it. Let him out again, let him get on with what passes for his life. Can't see the problem there. They shouldn't have kept him in longer, should they? I don't know, I don't think so. John in Bury, hiya.
Hello, Alan.
Hello, John.
Talking about recent, well, we were a few minutes ago about the waiting for an appointment of a chief constable.
Oh, yes, yes.
Well, what is the point in having an assistant chief constable already and waiting for a chief constable to be put forward as a name? I mean, what's the matter with David Watton?
Well, I'm not going to get into names, obviously.
Well, I am, because he's the assistant chief constable, or was.
Well, first of all, there are a number of assistant chief constables.
Actually, before I go any further, I'm a retired DCI.
OK, but there are a number of assistant chief constables who I think stand as heads of department, but there's only one deputy, isn't there?
Uh-huh.
So I presume the deputy will be operating presently of chief constable.
Well, that's correct at the moment.
Right, so...
But why can't they appoint him as the chief constable?
Because that wouldn't be fair on all those other people from outside of the area who may well be better qualified, better able, or indeed, I don't know, better politically. 1,000 reasons. Whenever the number one goes... We've just seen it with the Labour Party. The number one went, they replaced him with the number 1 too, and that's been a hell of a success, hasn't it?
It has, definitely. yeah.
Now, I'm not for one moment suggesting that the Deputy Chief Constable and now Acting Chief Constable is in danger of leading us down as many blind alleys as has happened politically.
No.
But you always, don't you, when somebody leaves, you don't automatically appoint their deputy. You cast your net and
find... No, but it
find...
seemed a bit silly having a deputy, then it suddenly decides that the deputy has gone down the ladder again.
Well, you have to have a deputy, because the deputy, if I understand it correctly, and I'm prepared to be corrected, but the chief constable has a number of assistant chief constables, and they are heads of department.
I call them bridesmaids.
Fair enough. And what you're arguing today seems to authenticate your view, but no matter, he has a number of assistants.
Yeah.
And I think it is... I mean, I'm prepared to be corrected, but I think it's... The deputy is in the chief constable's gift. So the chief constable is appointed, and then he appoints his deputy, because whatever the police force is doing, the chief constable's deputy needs to be someone who is, to use modern parlance, singing from the same hymn sheet as the chief. Now, not all his assistants would be or should be.
No. But
the chief constable will say, well, I want you to be my deputy. So when I'm not there, you do the things that I... No, that's the point. You will do what I would have done if I were there.
Right.
Now, once the chief constable is no more, either because he's resigned or in this case is dead, then the deputy would not automatically be appointed, because this is an opportunity for the authority to look again at the job, to look again at the people, the candidates for the job, and say, well, let's see who is best able to do what we want next for our police force. And if you look at, and you'll have seen it better than I, but if you look at the chief constables in the past, well, 30 years, really, you've had, you've had the big fella with the beard. I've forgotten his name now.
Well,
James Anderton, thank you. OK, well, James Anderton, you've had him.
James,
and then you got David Wilmot.
Yeah.
And then you got Michael Todd.
Yeah.
Now, with the best will in the world, you'd find the devil's own job to find a strand leading one to the other of those.
Yeah.
And yet they all did, in my view, they all did an extremely important job. And I've got criticisms of them all, as I suspect everybody else has.
Yeah.
But Anderton changed the police force in Greater Manchester dramatically. David Wilmot improved the public face of the police massively.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Michael Todd comes along, and he went... This is not to suggest that David Wilmot, who's actually a friend of mine, but this is not to suggest that David Wilmot didn't, but Michael Todd has said, well, OK, we've looked at how the police works within itself. We need to remind ourselves about getting back to policing per se, and has done that. Maybe it's time for somebody else Just appointing his deputy and saying, well, you were all right as number 2.
Yeah.
No, you've got to go through the process.
Right.
Perhaps get your name down. The money's good. It's about 160,000 a year or something. Get your name down.
I'm 84 now.
They'll know, but hey, come on. My dad's 85 and he could do the job and he's never been a copper.
Oh, well, I helped in the Yorkshire Ripper one. I was in second
Did you?
into Yorkshire for that.
Shh, that must have been hard.
It was hard.
Must have been horrible, that.
Yeah.
You know, because that was a time when the police were getting an awful lot of criticism. I'm not sure much of it was justified, and I've been at the forefront of many of the groups criticising the cops, but that was... I mean, mistakes happen, but frankly, I don't know a job where that doesn't happen, but...
Right.
But they were tough times, weren't they?
They were, but it worked out. We had the Yorkshire idea and my idea and a few more ideas, and we managed to nail the beggar.
One of the things that's said about the Ripper inquiry, I'm presuming we're talking about Peter Sutcliffe.
Peter Sutcliffe, yeah.
The thing that's said about it by those that are critical is the police missed blatant opportunities to catch him earlier.
They did, I think. I'm sure they did, but that's Yorkshire side, that.
But, I mean, are we saying that with hindsight, or is it
I did with hindsight, yeah.
But I mean... Just from your contact with the case and your time there, and there at the time, of course, does it feel, when you look back, that if you'd have been in the place where the officers who made the decisions they made, if you'd have been there, you'd have made different decisions?
I don't think so at the time, because they were just digging around. They weren't actually... They hadn't anything to go on properly. It was just searching for clues. Searching all the time, and then suddenly they got something, and that was it.
And am I right? There were about 100 filing cabinets of clues and leads.
Yeah, I know.
And in those days, it was manual, wasn't it?
But then it was decided, then it must be something to do with a lorry or a wagon, and that's how it came out.
And that's when that was the first...
That was the first
step.
First step, yeah. Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one last question. What do you think of the fact that Sutcliffe was locked up for life, is still locked up, and he's still able to send a shudder through us all? Yeah,
I know he is, yep. But there are many locked up doing the same thing, which we don't sort of hear about now.
But, well, it was a celebrated is the wrong word, but the notorious nature of that particular case, wasn't it?
Yeah. But the thing is, of course, there's that many people locked up that, Sutcliffe was just one of many now. He's just another name. What does it feel like on the day that you know you've got someone and you're going to bring him to court? Well, it's marvellous. It's a marvellous feeling. But the trouble is, you've got the next day to worry about that. Well, I appreciate that. You're on the horrid wheel, aren't you? It's not a comparison, but as you put a programme to bed in this business, all you can think of is the one you're doing next. The next week, next Absolutely. Day. Yeah. But I mean, there must be a strange moment of camaraderie, a goal-scoring moment or a try-scoring moment. Yes, it is, definitely. But it's all over and done with now. It's all over and dusted. And as far as I'm concerned, 1976, when I finally kicked the thing into touch, it's about 30-odd years ago now. Good Lord. So... You've done now for 30 years, you lazy dog. You're bleeding me dry. I know. You don't sound bothered. I'm not, really. Good on you, John. Anyway... Thanks for the chat. It's a pleasure. Good on you. Cheers, mate. Cheers. 0161 228 2255. Sean in Radcliffe, you'll be with us after the travel and the sport and all that other gubbins. 0161 228 2255 if you've something to say today. And also Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And thank you, Joanne. Can I just say thank you to everybody who sent me the business card, which I mean, I've received it from friends, from enemies, and indeed from you lot. And I get kicked every so often in this job. Somebody says, Beswick, you're just too cruel. You have no bloody soul.
All the time people say that to me. And it's your fault. It's not me, it's you. I must have had 30 people send me this particular business card, and it's a photograph of Joseph Fritzl, and on the card it says, Joseph Fritzl Limited, Cellar Conversions and Soundproofing Specialist, established 24 years, a family business. I am not the only cruel, sick, wicked rat on the planet. There's a bit of me that thinks we're in the majority.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
The government have rejected advice from official advisors to leave cannabis as a Class C drug. They've just announced it's being reclassified as a Class B1. Aid workers have been having problems securing visas to get into Burma, where more than 22,000 people are said to have been killed by a cyclone. At least 40,000 other people are missing. And MPs who've been looking into lessons to be learned from last summer's floods in England say the £800 million plans to deal with potential problems are chaotic. Manchester's weather, warm and sunny, highs of 24 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
If you're heading through the Middleton area of Greater Manchester, watch out for some slight delays around the roadworks on Old Hall Street. It's closed around Corporation Street with a diversion sign locally, causing, as I say, a bit of a backlog of traffic in the area. In Mosley, Ashton-under-Lyne, sewer works continue on Lees Road between Stockport Road and Under Lane. And again, that stretch is closed with a sign diversion in operation until the beginning of next week. And now to Manchester, Camp Street around Deansgate on the A56. We've still got this contraflow in force whilst water maintenance work continues, so do watch out for delays either side of the carriageway, especially during peak hours. Not doing too badly public transport, everything running to schedule for the moment on the Metrolink and on the trains. But don't forget, of course, if you can update me on anything you've heard, call in hands-free. That's 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester. Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Good afternoon. Well, a bad start is getting worse for Lancashire on the opening day of their county championship match against Durham at Old Trafford. Chris Malaband has the latest.
Well, Lancashire captain Stuart Law won the toss this morning and had no hesitation in electing to bat. It looked a beautiful morning to build a good total here for the home side, but they've struggled against some accurate Durham pace bowling. Latest score at Old Trafford is 61 for 3, and we've gone through 26 overs here at Old Trafford. Mal Loy on 22, Stuart Law on 3 are the men at the wicket. The 3 Lancashire wickets to go this morning. Mark Chilton on his first championship appearance of the season out, caught by Michael Di Venuto at second slip off the bowling of Mark Davis for 7. That was 33 for 1 in the 13th over. In the very next over, Paul Horton played a poor shot after a good little innings. He didn't move his feet at all and cut a wide long hop from Stephen Harmison to first slip, where Paul Collingwood held on for the catch. Then Mohammed Yusuf was the third man to perish, caught behind by Phil Mustard off the bowling of Mark Davis. Yusuf getting a good ball that climbed and left him and found his outside edge. So that was 52 for 3. Now Loy and Law trying to rebuild here. Paul Collingwood just into the attack for the first time for Durham. So Lancashire keen to try and get this innings going now. They're 61 for 3.
Thanks, Chris. We'll keep you updated throughout the day on BBC Radio Manchester. Lancashire bowler Sajid Mahmood, meanwhile, has become the latest England player to reveal he has rejected offers to join the Indian Premier League. Mahmood has not played for his country for more than a year, but hinted he could be tempted by the IPL if he doesn't earn a recall. An extraordinary opening spell from the Hampshire pace bowler James Tomlinson this morning. He's taken the first 6 Somerset wickets to fall in just 4 overs on the first day of the county match at Taunton, including those of Marcus Trescothick and Justin Langer. Manchester City have made an approach to Louis-Philippe Scolari to become their new manager. Club owner Thaksin Shinawatra is expected to sack Sven-Göran Eriksson at the end of the season. It's thought Shinawatra has offered the Portugal coach £3.2 million a year to replace Sven. There'll be a special City debate programme with Ian Cheeseman between 7 and 10 on Friday night. Manchester United midfielder Owen Hargreaves believes winning the Champions League is just as difficult as trying to win the World Cup. Hargreaves was part of the Bayern Munich side that won the European Cup in 2001.
The Champions League is just, I think it's just as difficult to win as the World Cup possibly. It's just played more often, but the Premier League as well. I mean, Premier League, I think it's easily the most difficult league. The teams and the balance is very difficult to win. If you could win both in one season, it's quite exceptional, really.
Wigan youngsters Sam Tompkins and Mark Flanagan have signed new contracts with the Super League club. Halfback Tompkins, the younger brother of first-team player Joel, has signed a new deal until the end of 2010 with an option of a further year. Flanagan, a loose forward or standoff, has signed a one-year extension to his current deal, which will take him until the end of 2009. The Paralympic World Cup is underway in Manchester. Over 400 athletes from 45 countries will be competing in athletics, swimming, cycling and basketball over the next 4 days. Today, the focus is on the basketball. Great Britain men take on the USA this afternoon, and John Pollock, a team member from Wigan, admits the sport is growing.
Paralympic wheelchair basketball is, I'd say it's the biggest crowd puller. It's definitely started in Sydney when we played America, believe it or not, which people still rank the best wheelchair basketball game that's ever been played like. And believe it or not, there was 15,000 sellout in the stadium, and there was, they reckon, estimated 4,000 outside trying to get in.
And Becky Want will bring you the latest from Sports City from 2 o'clock. Ireland have named Declan Kidney as their new rugby union coach. Currently in charge of Munster, he takes over from Eddie O'Sullivan, who left the job after a disappointing World Cup in Six Nations. And in Speedway, Bellevue are at home to Eastbourne in the Elite League this evening. Tapes are up at Kirkmanshume Lane at 8 o'clock.
Life and laughs with Eamon and Jimmy.
What was it, the Didgeridoo bar on Key Street?
Yeah.
It was an Australian theme bar, and there was a big boomerang behind the bar, and this bloke said to me, "Oh, look at that boomerang, if I throw that, will it come back?"
Jimmy said it will if it hits me.
Eamon O'Neill
and Jimmy Wag.
Oh, I used to go to sports gym.
I know you did. That girl who binged you.
Yeah, that's another one who chucked
You
me.
hook 'em, we'll cook 'em.
I said, nah, forget it.
Eamon and Jimmy.
I nearly forgot to tell you, I was involved in a crash the other day with one of those new Skodas.
Flipping heck.
What a mess. Jam, sponge, marzipan, all over the place.
If your radio sounds funny on Sunday morning, you must be listening to Eamon O'Neill and Jimmy Wag.
What a floor filler that one.
Sunday morning from 9.
At BBC Radio Manchester.
0161 228 2255. You've something to say, I've got people that wants to hear it. It's called Manchester. That's what they're called. It's called whatever. 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And of course 07786 206 951. Sean in Ratcliffe, hiya.
Well, I've got a problem with these new bus passes. Now, I get mine because I've got glaucoma, and obviously you're not allowed to hold a driving licence with glaucoma. Because believe you me, I'd rather have my own car than what passes for public transport. That's for sure.
Yes, quite.
So, I got my new bus pass only yesterday. Now, the date on it is valid to the 16th of November 2009. Now, that first date, 16th of November, happens to be my birthday, so I don't know if it's tied in with birthdays or not. But it looks like it. But the problem is, my old bus pass was valid until the 30th of September 2010. So the new pass they've sent me out is almost 10 months less validity than my old one.
Right.
So I thought everyone was supposed to be in the same position as they were with the new passes.
They are, but they will need to be renewed from time to time for reasons of, well, just to give the civil servants something to do, probably. Which birthday is it on the 16th of November?
That's, well, oh, blimey, Alan, he's asking, I'll be 55, I think.
55?
Yeah, but shouldn't have any relevance because I get mine.
Well, it might have relevance because they may... I mean, just imagine if they say it's got to be renewed on every 5th birthday. And by 5th, they mean 50, 55. So that they are invalidated at your death.
Right.
So it could be that. There could be all sorts of reasons.
I was mortified, though, when I got this new one out, and it's 10 months less validity on it.
Well, yes, but it isn't that it's going to expire. It's just, I mean, the other...
No, it just means you have to apply again, like 10 months early, and all the bloody palaver that goes with it.
The other question against it, and this is just deduction on my part rather than anything I know, but the other question might be that whilst this government has said that they're providing this, they've not set the legislation in train so that it exists forever.
Oh, yeah.
That's perfectly possible. It may be that politically it could
It'll
revert.
change the government.
It may do. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that might be something that's in people's minds. It's rather like the heating allowance. The heating allowance isn't there in perpetuity. I think it has to be agreed every year.
Right. Well, I also had two other problems with this pass. Now, I've just come back from a short break in Scarborough. Now, I've done this before. If you get the tram before 9:30, you pay the single adult fare. When I tried putting this into all three machines on the station, it wouldn't have it at all. So I ended up having to pay the full fare. I came back to Bury, went in to see the chap in the information office. I said, well, you know, what's going on here? This is what I did, and it wouldn't have it, and I had to pay full fare. Do you know what he told me?
What?
Oh, if you travel before 9:30, you're supposed to punch the fare for the single or return child fare.
Oh, I see, and it would issue that.
And you'd get it as a child fare, but
it doesn't tell you.
But it doesn't tell you that, no.
Well, it's worth knowing, isn't it?
Isn't that clever, eh? You've got to put it in
I
as a child
suppose
fare.
when they put all the machinery in, they didn't know about this. So maybe it's related to that, but at least we now know, and we'll tell everybody.
Well, it does actually on the machine have single concessionary fare. But if you put that in before 9:30, you won't get it. So they said, well, you've got to put it in as a single child fare or a return child fare, concessionary child fare.
Well, let us hope that they are working on that
but
as we
also,
speak.
we went on the bus in Scarborough with my old pass, because obviously the new one hadn't arrived. They wouldn't accept that on any of the buses in Scarborough or anywhere else.
They wouldn't accept the old one?
No.
No, they won't. They just don't. That's it.
People think, what's he whinging about? He's got free travel. But,
no, it's only the new pass. If you proffer the old-fashioned pass, they'll just say, sorry, that's not valid here.
Yeah.
The new one will be.
You know, if anyone's trying to go on the tram before 9:30, don't put in the adult return or single concessionary, put in the child fare. I thought, it's a joke, eh?
I should travel on the tram in short pants in future, Sean.
Well,
Good to
not that far off anywhere.
Get your knees brown. Good on you, mate. Cheers.
Bye.
0161 228 2255. If you've got something to say, feel free. David Chater, one of the MPs for Bury, has used the weekly session of Prime Minister's Questions in the Commons to highlight problems in his local council. Yes, he says that Bury Council is now unique for the wrong reasons. I'll try and find out what precisely he has asked to find out in what way Bury is now unique for the wrong reasons. I can't imagine what it is. We've done all the stuff about flogging the Canaletto or whatever it was. Les in Whitworth, are you?
Hi, Alan, how are you?
Not bad. What have you got?
Good, man. You just had the policeman on a couple of calls ago.
Former policeman, but yeah.
Yeah, former policeman, yeah. I was in the bath at the time. I've had to leap out and grab the phone, you see. I'm not having a go at police in general, because I have a great admiration for our police force, and particularly the ordinary copper, and they do a job I wouldn't like to do, dealing with the crap side of humanity, shall we say. But it's this triumphalism. You know, I know there's a great deal of relief when they catch somebody like the Ripper, and I can understand that. But it was the triumphalism at the end of it, where the words that you first heard on the kind of interview later was, "We got him." And I know there's a great deal of relief about that, but the thing is, that thing he said about, well, it narrowed it down to a lorry, and it was narrowed down to a lorry months and months. And, 3 young women were killed. That didn't necessarily mean if the police had followed up what they should have followed up, but they were, taken away with this, the hoax caller from the northeast, weren't they?
I'm Jack. That was what he said, wasn't it? I'm Jack.
They fixated on that and missed chance after chance. I mean, they actually caught him not through, the way they narrowed it down to a lorry. They caught him more by accident than anything else, if I remember rightly, with the number on the car not matching the actual car. And it's just... I've been watching a few recently on this crime and investigation channel. I'm quite sad. I don't have much of a life, as you can imagine.
Anyone that baths at 12:30 in the afternoon is suspect to begin with. But go on.
Exactly. So the thing was that you know, the same with the Black Panther, and I believe at the local museum here there's an ex-policeman giving a talk about the Black Panther. You may remember that case.
I do.
And that was a lot of a great kind of, well, a lot of police cock-ups. And the Yorkshire Ripper went on much longer than it should have done. I mean, all right, we're speaking from hindsight, but even so, the stuff that they knew at the time and didn't follow up. And 3 times Sutcliffe was taken in for questioning, and things pointed to him, like a £5 note coming from his wage packet found on a body in Preston, and things like this that just didn't follow up. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know that, you know, like you said, it was all done in those days with cards and in files, and it must have been absolute hell to try and follow up. But it's not so much that, it's the way they come across later as saying, well, great police work and all this, that, you know, gets to me, if you like, and upsets me.
Well,
because people lost their lives that needn't have done.
Well, all right. Well, let's analyse first of all the last bit. The idea that once they are confident that they've got the person and they've got the decision that they're going to take that person to court, so as far as they're concerned, they've got the right person.
Yeah, when he confesses, it's a pretty good pointer.
Well, no, it's not, and Stephen Kishko would be able to be used as evidence of that. So, but when the police are confident they've got the right person, and they are confident that they've got all the evidential, or the pieces of the evidential jigsaw puzzle together, and they're able to say, right, we've got the case, we've got the man. Triumphalism, I don't know. I think anyone in that position, when they've been pursuing an objective for a long time, would say, yes, that's it. That is it. Like when you put the last bit of paper on the lounge when you're decorating, or you clean the last window, you think, oh, thank Christ that's over, thank heaven.
Yeah, as I said, from coming from that point of view, I appreciate the relief. To me, when I know at the time that, you know, that at least 3 young girls have lost their lives that needn't have, it comes across as triumphalism to me.
Again, I was going to come to that bit.
Yeah.
I had a very, very, very superficial and tangential contact with the Ripper case. I was at a meeting in London, and there was a lot of kerfuffle in what you might call the ante-room to the place where the meeting was taken. It was the meeting of a charity, and we were having a meeting and discussing various things, as one does. There was a kerfuffle in the ante-room outside, and then there was a gentle knock at the door, and the sort of door guarder, a woman who was a secretarial type post, came in and said, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman, that wasn't me, and said, but I need to speak with such and such a body, who was one of the people at the meeting. And she said, I went over, I happened to be sitting next to this woman, and she came over and whispered, I'm afraid there's a senior police officer outside, and he needs to talk to you immediately. Now we thought, blimey, this isn't a local death, this isn't a man's died or something, you know, this is horrible. She's up for the high jump. And she went out, and we didn't see her again for 3 weeks. Now, she went out, and she went immediately back to West Yorkshire in a police car to be interviewed by the police, not in any way as a suspect, obviously, but as a witness. She was the last person to have seen alive the woman that was the last victim of the Ripper.
Right.
Now, frankly, I think, instead of thinking 3 people died that needn't have done, the other way of thinking of it is, if it wasn't for West Yorkshire Police, Greater Manchester Police, and to a certain extent Lancashire Police, another 20 would have gone before they got him.
Okay.
Because you can't solve the crime until you've got everything, and everything is not available.
Well, yeah, but you can... you know, to me, from what's come out since, they had enough to act a bit quicker than they did, particularly West Yorkshire.
The problem in those days, and to a lesser extent now, but it's still the case, having all the ducks in a row is one thing, but knowing that they're all in the row is another.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do know that there was at least one, if not a couple of police officers at the time were convinced it was Sutcliffe.
Well, yes, but there were... Yeah, but you see, we never know this. You see, Les, yes, there were coppers who were certain it was Sutcliffe, but there are other coppers who were certain it was me.
No, well...
Well, not me, but you know what I mean.
Yes,
another.
I do
They were
take your
about
point,
6 suspects, and some were, some were saying, well, it's Sutcliffe, and others were saying, no, it's I'm Jack, and others were saying, hang on a minute, what about this bloke? He drives a lorry, he's got a ball-peen hammer.
I do realise how difficult it was, and I do think they do a very, very difficult job, but it's just that triumphalism to me is out of place.
Les, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. John in Lee, I'm afraid you'll be after the 1 o'clock news now, as will anyone else who calls us on the relevant number, which I'll give in a moment. You see?
Join me, Mike Shaft, as we ask life's difficult questions this Sunday from 7 on BBC Radio Manchester.
And the number I promised, actually, it's the one you already know, but never mind. 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And, of course, 07786 206 951.
95.1 FM. DAB Digital Radio.
And the World Wide Web. This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, cannabis will be reclassified, and a Greater Manchester Labour MP admits a lesson's been learnt after the election results.
Durham have the early upper hand over Lancashire.
Well, this afternoon is very warm and mostly sunny. There's just a risk of an isolated shower possible, but top temperatures will get to 24 Celsius.
And if you're travelling through Hyde, watch out for closures on Market Street northbound. It's shut between G Cross and the M67 Slip Road for Junction 3 Hyde, whilst gas maintenance work continues.
Good afternoon, I'm Faye Rusco. The government's to reclassify cannabis to a Class B drug, rejecting recommendations from its own advisors. The Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs says it should remain a Class C substance, as it has been for the last 4 years. But the Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, says some forms of the drug are now almost 3 times stronger than they were a decade ago. She told the Commons the decision to toughen the law was compelling because of her worries for the health of young people.
I have decided to reclassify cannabis to a Class B drug, subject to parliamentary approval. My decision takes into account issues such as public perception and the needs and consequences for policing priorities.
It's believed a gunman killed after a standoff with police in southwest London yesterday was a barrister. He died after 3 exchanges of fire with armed officers during a 5-hour siege. Some shots were also fired at a nearby house. The Independent Police Complaints Commission's investigating the incident, which happened yesterday evening in Chelsea. Aid workers have been having problems securing visas to get into Burma, where more than 22,000 people are said to have been killed by a cyclone. At least 40,000 other people are missing. It's feared that the longer the aid groups are delayed, the worse the risk will be of disease taking hold. A couple from Stockport who returned from Burma just before the cyclone hit are helping to raise aid. Bob and Polly Hayward were travelling with a local charity in the area, which has been devastated by floods. Bobby's planning to return to the country, and Polly wants to raise as much cash as possible.
They had nothing to start with, and we can get, if we can get money to them, which we know we can get money to them, it's just collecting the money.
I was quite upset when I visited the country, and I'm devastated now. I feel so useless here that I'm just hoping there's something I can do there.
Manchester's expecting tens of thousands of Glasgow Rangers fans to descend on the city next week for the UEFA Cup final against Zenit St Petersburg, which is taking place at the City of Manchester Stadium. But some fans are concerned that not enough's being done to look after them. Graham Jones is a Rangers fan from Bury. He got in touch because he's concerned there doesn't seem to have been enough preparation.
There's a major event happening in Manchester, and the feedback is that the Rangers fans just aren't welcome. What's happening when I go around lots of pubs and clubs or whatever like that, they're having letters sort of saying that they can the bars feed's got to be closed, not to open after the match at all or anything like that. I'm not aware of any fan zones or anything like that.
Well, the police and the City Council have reassured fans that measures are in place, including fan zones where they can watch the match safely. A Cabinet Minister's admitted that Labour faced a difficult few days. The Prime Minister's been under attack from some backbenchers after huge losses in last week's local elections. The Culture Secretary, Andy Burnham, and the Lee MP says campaigning for the elections was a serious lesson.
The great thing about
elections and the British political system is that people like me and the other people around the cabinet were out knocking on doors in our own constituencies and elsewhere last week, so we had pretty direct contact with people, and the right thing to do is listen to what they were saying then and respond in the right way.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Lancashire have had a disappointing morning session on day one of their county championship match against Durham. Chris Malaband reports from Old Trafford.
It's lunch at Old Trafford. Lancashire 75 for 3 from 31 overs. Mal Loy 32 not out and Stuart Law 7 not out. But it's been the Durham seam bowlers who've had the upper hand this morning, at one stage reducing Lancashire to 52 for 3. Mark Chilton, Paul Horton and Mohammed Yusuf, the men out for the home side. Chilton perishing to Mark Davis for 7, Horton to Stephen Harmison for 25, and Mohammed Yusuf, who got a good one from Davis, he was out for 3. So Lancashire needing to rebuild after lunch. Stuart Law batting patiently for 7, Mal Loy much more fluent on 32. At lunch, Lancashire 75 for 3.
We'll keep you updated throughout the day. Louis-Philippe Scolari's spokesman has confirmed that the Brazilian has been approached about the manager's job at Manchester City. City owner Thaksin Shinawatra is widely expected to sack Sven-Göran Eriksson this summer. And Wigan Warriors youngsters Sam Tompkins and Mark Flanagan have signed new contracts at the JJB. Halfback Tompkins has signed a 2-year deal, whilst Flanagan has extended his contract until the end of 2009.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stotts.
Well, this afternoon is going to be mostly sunny and very warm. This afternoon, though, we are going to see some cloud bubbling up from time to time, and it could just bring us the risk of an isolated shower. If a shower does turn up, it's going to be a heavy one. Top temperatures today, though, getting to a very warm 24 Celsius.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
There's an awful lot of international sneering going on at the moment. This cyclone that has, well, we use the word lightly, but I think it's appropriate here, that has devastated Burma. Many tens of thousands of people, up to 1 million people homeless. And by the time they finally count all the bodies, I suspect there'll be in excess of 30,000 people dead and all the rest of it. And you just heard it in the news there, the charities are having difficulty getting visas. And you would think that what Burma ought to do is just take down all their barriers and say, come on, come and help us out. The great problem with that is they know, and I know, that if they did, America, Britain and others would immediately send spies. That's what they would do. They would send spies. They would go there, they would do the aid, and they would make contact with the Burmese, and they would use those Burmese people as plants, as ciphers, and all the rest of it. Yeah, I know it's cruel and it's wicked, and the Americans and the British would never do that. You're damn right they would. You are damn right they would. John in Lee. Hiya, John.
Hello, Alan.
What have you got for us?
Just before the news, you come out with what we call sick joke, about the cellar.
Indeed.
Now, I've got loads of them on my phone. We're all getting them. They're all going round.
I don't think I want any more, but go on.
No, I'm not going to tell you one.
Good.
All I'm saying is, I'm definitely not offended by them, you know what I mean?
No, I don't think I am either.
Some people are, and when you come out with it on wireless, like, a lot of people be offended by it, but I'm not sticking up for them to complete themselves. All I want to know is, how can you get away with things like that? And another radio presenter, what I used to like watching and listening, been sacked for just saying 2 words. And I don't want to mention them unless you let me do.
No, I don't know which one you're talking about and which words they were. I'd rather not find out now. But I'm getting away with it. I don't know that I've done anything wrong to get away with.
Oh, well, could you not just tell me why he was sacked? What had he broke? What rules had he broke to be sacked?
I don't know whom you're referring to, and...
Well, they told them to vote for somebody.
Ah, right, you're referring to James Whale.
Yeah, I didn't know if I could mention him.
Well, we have to be careful. Yeah. But the story, and James, incidentally, James Whale will be appearing on a satellite television near you, advertising jewellery before the week is out, apparently. But there you are. He's a mate of mine, is James.
Yeah, he's got what?
And I'll tell you why he got sacked, if all that the newspapers are reporting is true, and on this occasion I've got no reason to doubt them. But whereas newspapers can and do take a political position, a party political position, in the run-up to elections, broadcast media are forbidden to by law, and it's a law called the Representation of the People Act. And broadcasters and those who broadcasters is usually described as the organisation, like the BBC, ITV or whatever, Talk Sport or whatever. They're the broadcasters, but the people who do the broadcasting, people like me, James and many others, we too are bound by those rules. And whereas I can say on this occasion, in this issue, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, the Liberal Democrats, the BNP or whatever are a bucket of crap and they're getting it wrong, I can say that legitimately most of the time. In the run-up to an election, I am not allowed, and there's a specific period, a number of days defined by Parliament, where I am not allowed, and none of my colleagues throughout the broadcasting business are allowed to say, go out and vote for John in Lee or whatever.
Yeah.
In fact, donkeys years ago, and I mean donkeys years ago, Stuart Hall was a presenter on North West Tonight. You remember Stuart, obviously, he's still around, he's Stuart, and a cracking lad he is. Stuart Hall was asked by a pal of his if he'd sign his form so he could stand for election. Now, the bloke standing for election actually represents a party that isn't the one that's supported privately by Stuart Hall, but he was a mate. He said, of course I'll sign your form. And he signed it. And that became public knowledge, and the BBC had to take Stuart off air because he's not allowed to be on air having endorsed a candidate under the Representation of the People's Act. Now, James Whale, who spent much of his broadcasting life breaking the rules, broke one too many on this occasion, and unfortunately, I don't want to draw any conclusions, but I don't think he was. I don't think he was unaware of that rule. That's all I've got to say.
It seems a bit frivolous, isn't it? You know,
well, it's not.
They're sacked on the spot for that.
Well, you imagine, John. I mean, it's a bit big-headed to say this, but broadcasters can. I'm not suggesting I do. I hope I don't really, but broadcasters can influence people. And if I said, go out and vote for the John in Lee party, vote for John, he's a pal of mine, he's a good bloke, go and vote for John, he's standing for election in Lee, go and vote for him, he's a cracking bloke. Well, that's rather unfair on all the people who aren't John in that election.
I suppose so, yeah, I suppose. But is it a sackable offence?
Incontrovertibly.
Could he not have been fined a couple of thousand or something?
No, you are sacked on the spot for that.
Bloody hell.
And it cannot be any other way, because in fact, the boss of that radio station, it won't happen, the boss of that radio station could go to jail.
I suppose
could go to jail.
It's against law of the land, I suppose it can.
It's very strict, very, very strict.
Well, about the bus passes, I'll know quick on the bus passes.
Go on, then.
I received mine a couple of months ago, and mine was for life, the other one, the first one I had.
Yeah.
This one runs out, like the bloke said in Ratcliffe, it runs out on my birthday too. I thought it was a coincidence, but but it's not according to. I've asked a few, and they all run out on your birthdays.
Well, could it possibly be that it's all related to the photograph?
It could be. You go older, don't you? You know what I mean?
You do go older, and a lot of stuff moves south, doesn't it?
I mean, well, when I took mine in, he says, you're not even 60, I can tell, you won't believe I was 60, I said 60, I passed 60. But the booklet, what come with it, I think it was a booklet or a letter, what come with it, it does tell you if you travel in between them hours, what you were on about, you have to press the child's fur.
Oh, does it say that?
It does say that in the book.
There you are, Sean, never read his book.
No.
All right, mate, good on you, John. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry for that tedious and tortuous explanation of why a former colleague of mine, in fact, the very first late-night phone-in I ever presented, I was stepping into the shoes left vacant by the aforementioned Mr. Whale, and it was a hell of a job. But there you are, that's life. He's a good lad. I was going to say he's now an unemployed good lad, but apparently he's going to be working for the shopping channel. I really must phone him and congratulate him on that spin of his career. Dear God.
Mornings sound better with Eamon O'Neill and Diane Oxford.
Eamon and Diane.
Fascinating story in one of the papers about a huge business takeover for £11.5 billion.
How many's a billion again?
You have to ask how much a billion is. You're never going to get there.
That's so true.
Eamon and Diane and you.
If you drop litter, they tell you.
Pick it up!
Pick it, correct.
You've done the voiceover, haven't you?
Yeah, you're looking round, because when I first saw it, I thought, who the hell's talking? I thought to myself, oh, that's brilliant.
The station with Eamon and Diane for breakfast.
It's got to be an investment for the future.
Back tomorrow morning from 6 at BBC Radio Manchester.
Dear Alan, says Eric in Gorton, when I heard on the radio the other day that Gordon Brown was going to listen and lead, at first I thought, well, at least he's doing the honourable thing. Then I realised it was listen and lead. I thought I'd heard listen and leave. Pity. Getting rid of the 10% starting rate of tax is not the only thing hitting the low paid. It's all of us who are suffering. Well, no, it's not. You see, yes, we are all suffering because we lose the 10%, but there are some of us who are benefiting because the 22% rate has been reduced to 20, so overall we're a little bit better off. But never mind, let's not get in the mathematics of it or the arithmetic of it, as we'll all have headaches. Paul in Duckingfield. Hiya, Paul.
Good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon.
You all right, mate?
Yeah.
Just been reading my local paper this morning, and we've talked about this thing before. There's a lot of it I agree with, and some of it that is absolute total garbage, and the heading is Learner Plan to Cut Road Carnage. Ruth Ellis has come up with some mistress transport.
Ruth Ellis?
Yeah, Ruth Kelly, sorry.
That'd have been a trick.
Still hanging, sorry. Transport Secretary has come up with some proposals which are absolute garbage, and obviously doesn't know what she's talking about. Learners, it says here, take an average 52 lessons to pass the test. Well, yes, I can agree with that, and that's about the only thing she's got right, because when parents now say to me, my daughter's had 15 lessons, and she's not, I can now say, well, have a look at this piece of paper, and that's what you're up against. But it says it's got up 50% in 10 years, that has. So that means that when they introduced the theory test a few years ago, it's done absolutely nothing at all to make people learn any more quickly. It just costs them more money. She says, under her proposals, learners will be told to improve their driving skills at night and on motorways. Now, how can we improve skills on motorways if we're not allowed to take them on motorways?
That is bizarre, isn't it?
She's as thick as... I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but is the first word pig?
Yeah, and the second's not...
The second one's not, yeah.
Driving test takes biggest shake-up, it says. It says to reduce death on the roads. All instructors will be forced to publish their pass rates. Well, as an ex-driving instructor yourself, you have to agree that to a certain extent, pass rates don't mean zilch, because you can get 10 people all pass first time, and this has happened to me, and I'm thinking, I must be doing something right, me. Then the next 8 all fail for maybe one little stupid little daft thing. So your pass rate goes from 95% to 44% overnight. So people have to understand that it's not us. We take them when they're ready. I'm sorry, most of us take them when they're ready, and when they don't, all they've got to do is to get our cowboys out. When someone takes someone to test, if the examiner feels that person wasn't up to standard, then they report that driving instructor to the SA.
Yes, it's not just a case of you take them when they're ready. There are what you might call other yardsticks, aren't there?
Yes,
if you take too many who are not ready, then they start just questioning you.
And so they should do. We already have to do check tests, as you will know. Someone comes and sits in the back of your car and gives you a good score or a bad score, and you judge by that. But the proposal she's making, I'm sorry, absolute bloody garbage, because she doesn't obviously know what she's talking about.
What would you do to improve the standard of early drivers, as I'd call them, recently passed drivers? What would you do?
Well, I'd make it compulsory that it's the 7th of... I've got a girl on test about an hour from now. There's your driving licence on the 7th of May. You get your full driving licence when whoever your driving instructor is signs the form to say you have now had 4 hours on the motorway. Yes?
Yeah, go on.
But then you're going to get... With the parents, I'll take her on the motorway, he'll be all right, she'll be all right, I can do all that. This is one of the things we're up against. Every time we get a learner, and you'll know yourself, when the parents decide to take them out as well, then it's one step forward and two steps back.
There is quite a lot of that, yeah.
Yeah, but you see, nowhere in this proposal, again, does it say, we are going to stop parents taking people out without dual controls.
It has been...
Probably uninsured.
It has been mentioned. It's not being reported in many papers, but it has been mentioned that there are people within government considering banning people teaching their partners and their relatives.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That is a great idea, because the worst thing that ever happens to us as instructors is, I've been out with my dad, and my dad said, and unfortunately, because they love the dad to bits, they tend to take notice of the dad. The other stupid thing she says here is that at the moment, young drivers have to rely on word of mouth. No, you don't have to rely on word of mouth, but word of mouth is one of the best things that you can rely on. If I'm walking past someone's house and I'm thinking of having a new brick garage built at my house, and I say, they've had a good garage built there, I'd knock on them and say, excuse me. In fact, I'll tell you what happened, Alan. I had my driveway done about 3 or 4 years ago in this concrete with pattern on, and where did I get the number from? So I was teaching someone to drive, I pulled up at his house, and opposite his house was a nice driveway, and I thought, oh, I'll be cheeky. Knocked at the lady's door. I said, I'm really sorry to trouble you, but as you say, I'm just teaching your neighbour across the road. Your driveway looks very, very nice indeed. Could you tell me who did it? She told me, and I had mine done. That's word of mouth. If you go and get someone out of the paper, they turn up and give you a price, and there could be a load of rubbish, couldn't there?
Well, yes, indeed.
So word of mouth is a great thing. And not
everybody says use word of mouth.
Well,
yeah,
she's not
absolutely.
saying that.
Well, no, she's not saying that here. I mean, I'm correcting myself here somewhat, but Ruth Kelly has said that they want to make the test harder. The AA survey showed that 73% of people support a compulsory 40 hours of tuition. I mean, what do you think of that? That a person be required to have 40 hours of tuition?
In some ways I agree, and in some ways I don't agree, because I've got to say most people will take that anyway. But as we spoke...
Will they?
Sorry? Oh, yeah.
They never took anything like that in my day.
Oh, you must be brilliant.
No. I just think the rules were different.
No, I'm only joking when I tell you, Alan.
Yeah.
The thing I spoke to you a few weeks ago was, when they start doing things like that, I've got a lad that he actually works at Denton Bass. I can mention Denton Bass, it's done his swimming pool. And he works there, and he still works there now. And he had, when he took his driving lessons with me, he had 11 lessons and passed first time.
Yeah, I remember a mate of mine who was in a drunken stupor one evening. I agreed to give him free driving lessons because I'd just become a driving instructor, and he was a good pal, he still is. And I took him out for his first lesson, and in those days you used to wait 6 months for your test. And I said, screw this, you're too good, I'm not teaching you for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Send off for your test. When you get a date, we'll start doing it. And he passed first time, because he was really good. But it would have been silly for him to have 40 hours of tuition.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If I'd have said to Glenn, whose dad was a friend of mine as well, that doesn't mean you can learn any more quickly.
No.
You know, if I'd have said to him, that's 11 lessons. In fact, his 11th lesson was the hour before his test, on the day of his test. If I'm supposed to say to him, by the way, I've got to give you another 29. We spoke a few weeks about this, Alan. I said, how can you make someone have another 29 that they don't need?
Yeah, it's very strange. But this whole thing, I mean, I said I was going to correct myself, so I really ought to do it. But even if compulsory tuition is introduced, there will still be an essential role for parents giving their teenage children vital practice in the car. I used to say don't, and you're saying much the same thing.
It's the worst thing. There's a road near me, this girl I'm going to in a minute, there's a road near me where I always say to her, listen, this road, you stay in third gear, it's narrow, it's bender, it's full of parked cars, third gear. The week after, she's going down, I said, what, did I tell you, Amy, about this road, it's third gear? She said, well, no, my dad said I should be in fourth here.
Well, there you go. Crazy, isn't it? Good on you, Paul.
Just a minute, Alan. The other thing she never mentions, which people should know about, it's very, very, very important indeed. She doesn't mention the fact that a lot of the big driving schools use trainee instructors, so people are being taught by trainee instructors, not fully qualified.
Indeed they are. Good on you. We must leave it. We've got to go. We're late to the headlines, but thank you very much indeed. Always ask for the badge, you said, and he's right.
The man who murdered Rochdale schoolgirl Leslie Molseed 32 years ago is appealing against his conviction. 54-year-old Ronald Castreet from Oldham was given a life sentence in November. The government's to reclassify cannabis to a Class B drug, rejecting recommendations from its own advisers. And a decision on whether to put up big screens for next week's UEFA Cup final won't be made until the weekend. Manchester City Council believes 60,000 Rangers fans will come down here next Wednesday, most of them without tickets. Manchester's weather warm and sunny, highs of 24 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Traffic all seems to be on the move along the M60 between Junction 23 Ashton-under-Lyne on the clockwise and anti-clockwise carriageways through to Junction 6 at Sale, moving at a nice steady speed for the minute. And we're not doing too badly either through the roadworks on the Sharston link, heading Manchester bound on the M56 between 3 Bagley and 2 Sharston, despite the fact that traffic's being slowed down to a speed of 40 miles per hour through that restricted area, heading towards the M60. In Poynton, London Road on the A523, again down to 1 lane either side of the carriageway between First Avenue and Adlington Park, whilst work continues on Hope Green Railway Bridge. And on Deansgate on the A56, water maintenance work continues between Liverpool Road and Key Street, which means a contraflow system is in operation, so do watch for delays, especially during peak hours. If you spot any further problems on the road and you can tell me about them though, do get in touch hands-free on 0161 244 4951. I'm Carl Banks.
Helping Manchester, help Manchester. BBC Radio Manchester Interaction with Linda Kay.
Do you dream of starting your own business? Maybe you've got a great idea but don't know whether it'll work. Well, Business Support Solutions can help you find out for free.
You can come along for a half-day awareness session with a qualified business advisor, test your business idea out to see if it's going to work or not. You can go away and think, yes, great, I can do this, or you can go away and reevaluate your ideas and then maybe come back with something else when you're ready.
The workshops are for everyone and any kind of business, and it's an ideal way to see if your finances will stack up.
The awareness sessions are a fantastic opportunity for you to look at all the figures involved in starting your own business, and this prepares you then if you're going to try and get finance from the banks or any other lenders out there, because you can make sure it all adds up.
When you're ready to get started, Business Support Solutions will also give you one-to-one support, which is free as well, so there really is nothing to lose.
The range of businesses is endless. You name it, any vocation that's out there that somebody can start a business in, we can help.
To find out what's on offer, call Interaction 0161 244 4321.
BBC Radio Manchester Interaction with CSB Broadcast 0161 244 4321.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hiya. Let me start by asking you a question. Do you believe that everyone who missed out as a result of the removal of the 10p tax ban will be fully compensated for that which they have lost? Do you think they will? Every single person who lost money, they come in blocks. It's not that particular individual loses out, but that one doesn't. It's about blocks. This group of people, that group of people, that group of people. There are a number of groups who consequently miss out as a result of the removal of that tax ban. The government has promised to compensate those. But do you believe that everybody who missed out, everybody who lost money as a result, paid more tax if you like, but lost money as a result of the change, will be compensated? Whatever your answer, listen to this exchange. This is Nick Clegg, leader of the Liberal Democrats, at his opportunity to ask the Prime Minister questions at Prime Minister Question Time today. First of all, they make statements. They all do. I'll read it out because it's quite witty. Everybody now knows that when it comes to helping the most needy, you've got no principles and the Tories have got no policies. So, a double shot, if ever there was. And then he demanded, and listen to this question. This was Nick Clegg, leader of the Liberal Democrats, to Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister. Will you now provide an absolute guarantee that those who have lost out will be compensated in full, backdated to the beginning of April, and will not have to jump through hoops to claim what is rightfully theirs? Mr Brown countered that the Liberal Democrats' opposition to the government reforms such as the minimum wage and child tax credits was, quote, not a record they should be proud of. So, will you compensate everybody who lost out? Reply, you lot of crap. I paraphrase, but that's what he said. He didn't say yes, and he didn't say no. But if the answer was yes, the political benefit of hiding that answer is nil. So it can only be that as it stands at the moment, it is not the government's intention to compensate everybody who lost out. For if it was their intention, you can bet your bottom dollar that he'd be stood there with the flagpole of Big Ben up his bum, shouting it as loud as he could. We are going to compensate everybody who lost out, Hootsman. That's what he would have said. We didn't say that. What he said was, you lot of crap. In other words, not everybody is going to be compensated. I don't care, why should it? It's not my money. He doesn't care, why should he? It's not his money. 0161 228 2255. Vinny is trying to start a campaign to get the aforementioned broadcaster back in situ. Well, I'm afraid I can't contribute to that debate, because just because he's a pal of mine doesn't mean I'm going to do well. My bus pass lasts until 2013. My previous one, my old one, lasted... Hang on, my bus... You've missed the word pass out, Barry. It's not helping me. My bus pass lasts until 2013. My old one lasted until 2011. It tells me in the booklet relating to the conditions of use that using the pass before 9:30 on Metrolink, you should buy a child's ticket. Sean, they say you've not read your booklet. I don't blame you. I never read that sort of stuff either. And I thought I was of low moral turpitude. And I thought I was of low moral turpitude. Neil in Bebbington, I need more information. It's very difficult to read your email. And I thought I was of low moral turpitude means one thing. And I thought I was of low moral turpitude means something entirely different and is rather more accusatory. So I either give inflections, for crying out loud, or don't bother in the first place. You just make it harder for me. Maybe that was your objective. I can live with that. And I do like this. And I won't tell you who sent it me, but you'd be amazed how many people call Ruth Kelly Ruth Ellis. I've never heard it before. I am told by my emailer that it's an almost daily occurrence. And the reason I'm not going further is because it is followed up by perhaps it's wishful thinking on the part of some folk. What could they possibly mean? What could our communicator possibly mean by that? I once heard the words, poor Ruth Ellis. And do you know who said them to me? Pierpoint. Albert Pierpoint. He just published his autobiography, and I got to read it. He's the former, and I think certainly the last to perform a state execution on the part of the government, unless you include the SAS shooting them people in Malta, but that's another story, in Gibraltar, but that's another story. But a formal execution of a convicted murderer. He was the last. Albert Pierpont. He was a public hangman for many, many years. And he wrote an autobiography, and in it he just referred to many of his cases, or many of the people he put to death, including Ruth Ellis. And he said, talking about he never revealed what any of them were like on the way to the gallows, if I recall. But he said, poor Ruth Ellis. And I asked him, why poor Ruth Ellis? And he said, well, hers was a crime of passion, and in other countries she wouldn't have been condemned. Indeed, in some countries, she wouldn't have even been convicted. Well, I don't know the law of other countries by any means, so can't say, but, yeah. That was who said Ruth Ellis. Poor Ruth Ellis. It was a strange thing. Not all bus passes expire on the holder's birthday. Mine expires on the 24th of July 2012. My birthday is the 24th of December, says Ray in Winton. But they have access to your medical records, Ray, and they know you're not going to make it to the 24th of December. so they've just given you one to July. Oh, how cruel was that? Not cruel enough, some say. Actually, Mrs. Winton says much the same thing. So does Dale, now I come to think. Dale, do you remember him? Whatever happened to Dale Winton? Alan, compulsory driving lessons. We have compulsory education, but they still leave school gormless. I know why teenagers use text to communicate. It's because they can't talk. I telephoned somebody at the weekend and tried to leave a message with a teenager. It was like pulling teeth. I ended up saying, forget it, I'll phone back later. Now, Kevin, you've missed the point. The teenager didn't want to take the responsibility for your message, and so made it so uncomfortable and unreliable for you that you decided to not bother. I think his wit and wisdom achieved his desired age. I wonder if you can help me, says Evelyn. Do you know anyone who can repair my radio? There seems to be something wrong with it, because I'm sure you said you gave someone free driving lessons. I did, but it was my mate Nick, and he was my flatmate at the time, and he was my best mate at the time, and I suppose in many ways he still is. I'm not sure, but there you are. We hardly ever see each other. He lives down south. But it was my mate Nick, and I was in my cups at the time. He took advantage of me in the nicest possible way. Alan, why should I be compensated in full? I'm not a bank, for God's sake. That's Norman. Oh, that's very good. That's very good, isn't it? That's very, very good. The banks have spent all their time trying to make absolutely certain that they were out of the grasp of the government in every way possible. Until, of course, they struggled for brass. And then they couldn't get the Bank of England to help them quick enough. Was it ever thus? Was it ever thus? Extraordinary. 0161 228 2255. The dust is beginning to settle on what the senior police officer said the other day about closed-circuit television, or as we now call it, because we're all living our lives in alphabet soup, the CCTV. He said it didn't really help to reduce crime. Well, fair enough. But I think it's the Independent asked the question today, is it worth the money? We've all spent via our various processes of taxation thousands upon thousands, and nationwide, probably, frankly, millions of pounds just for that, for there to be CCTV up and down the high street. You are rarely, if we're to believe all we're told, you are rarely out of the view of a closed-circuit television camera these days. However, it would appear that they're not much use, and that the Independent have done a whole page given over to the question, are CCTV cameras a waste of money in the fight against crime? And they've then got a series of explanations of the various points of view. And the arguments seem to be, CCTV is costing hundreds of thousands of pounds a year and solving less than 3% of crimes. The evidence that CCTV deters criminals is very, very thin on the ground. And also, it's making the UK like a giant Big Brother set. Every step you take, they'll be watching you. Yeah. And then, no, it shouldn't be scrapped. The CCTV has helped in major crime investigations, including murder and terrorist cases. People feel reassured knowing that there's a camera to deter muggers. and the cameras are not being used properly at present. This is not the fault of the equipment. Well, no one's saying it's the fault of the equipment, but if the equipment is not being used properly and the motivation is not there to get the personnel to use it properly, then it's not worth having, is it? In the end, it's only as good as those that use it. That applies to every tool known to man. Tools are just things we use to assist man to do their work. Certainly. Norman says, hey, Alan, Pier Point. What a cracking film that was with Timothy Spall. I'm, at the moment, looking at a one-person play where the person doing the playing will play the role of Albert Pierpoint. It was written by a mate of mine called Pete, and it's a one-person play. There are slides and everything else, and it would be Albert Pierpoint. Obviously he's dead. It'd be an actor playing Albert Pierpoint and giving a sort of 1 hour, 1.5 hour long lecture with slides about being the public hangman, what that involves. And I'm thinking of doing it. I'm thinking of putting it on. I'm thinking of being Albert Pierpoint, as it were. I've got the play, and I've got Bernard Wrigley looking at it, because he's an actor, really, Wrigley. He's not just a croaky bloke who sings off tune and tells jokes that aren't funny. He's not just that. He's also an actor, director, and all that gubbins, and I'm thinking of getting him in to direct it. But anyway, we're going to have a look at it sometime soon. I've got the play, I've got the words, and we might give it a go. Can't imagine anyone would come to watch it. Peter in Stockport, with you to the side at sport.
BBC Radio Manchester. Headline News.
The man who murdered Rochdale schoolgirl Leslie Molseed 32 years ago is appealing against his conviction. 54-year-old Ronald Castry from Oldham was given a life sentence in November. Families of 14 British servicemen, including 4 from the northwest who were killed when their RAF Nimrod plane crashed in Afghanistan, have heard a radio recording of their last moments. And a decision on whether to put up big screens for next week's UEFA Cup final won't be made until the weekend. Manchester City Council believes 60,000 Rangers fans will come down here next Wednesday, most without tickets. Manchester's weather gloriously sunny, highs of 24 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
If you're heading through the Tilsley area of Greater Manchester, watch out. Resurfacing work continues between Boots Hall Road and Stanfield Drive. That stretch is still closed, and traffic can only travel towards the Worsley roundabout for the moment, and those restrictions will be in place now until around about the 22nd of June this year. In the Rochdale area, in Sudden, the A58 Manchester Road heading out of town is still restricted whilst long-term roadworks continue between Edinburgh Way and Silk Street. And in Oldham, Broadway on the A663 down to one lane either side of the carriageway around Hunt Lane whilst roadworks continue until later on next week. Now, don't forget, of course, if you can update me on the traffic situation where you are, do call in hands-free on 0161 244 4951. I'm Carla Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports.
Good afternoon, I'm Ian Cheeseman. The Premier League's response to claims that their competition is boring on the way. Well, first cricket and Sajid Mahmood has become the latest England player to reveal he's rejected offers to join the Indian Premier League. The Lancashire bowler has not played for his country for more than a year, but hinted he could be tempted by the IPL if he doesn't earn a recall. Well, next to the latest from Old Trafford, it's day one for Lancashire against Durham. Chris Malaband.
Just resumed after lunch here at Old Trafford. Lancashire 75 for 3 in the 32nd over. It was Durham's morning, really. Their seam bowlers making good progress into the Lancashire top order batting. Mark Chilton, Paul Horton and Mohammed Yusuf, the men to go this morning, with Mark Davis picking up 2 wickets and Stephen Harmison picking up 1. Malloy on 32 and Stuart Law on 7, the men charged with the Lancashire recovery. Latest score at Old Trafford, Lancashire 75 for 3.
Thanks, Chris. The Premier League has responded to Kevin Keegan's claim that the league is boring. The Newcastle manager made his comments earlier this week because the same 4 clubs dominate the competition year after year. year. But their chief executive, Richard Scudamore, denies that that's led to boredom or a loss of interest.
There's interest pockets throughout the league, whether it's the relegation tussle is interesting, the tussle in the middle for European places, the tussle at the top is interesting. But what I can't do is translate everybody's individual concerns, such as Kevin's. I have to take a step back from that and look at the league as a whole and see much of what you're hearing is people's individual concerns and challenges which they themselves have to face.
The Bolt manager, Gary Megson, says the club's problems haven't been relevant for just one season. The Wanderers all but secured their Premier League safety at the weekend, and while he's pleased to have survived, Megson says he isn't solely to blame.
These players have given it everything that they've possibly got, and if there has been and there hasn't, but if there has been a downturn, it's not Phil Gartside's fault, and it's not Gary Megson's fault. These things have been going on for about 18 months.
Rugby League and Wigan youngsters Sam Tompkins and Mark Flanagan have signed new contracts for the Super League club. Halfback Tompkins, the younger brother of first-team player Joel, has signed a new deal until the end of 2010, with an option for a further year. Flanagan, a loose forward or standoff, has signed a one-year extension to his current deal, which will take him through until the end of 2009. In Speedway, Bellevue will have Redcar's Ty Proctor and Glasgow's Robert Kiesak guesting in tonight's meeting with Eastbourne in the Elite League. They replace Billy Forsberg and Steve Boxall, who are injured. Tapes are up at Kirkman's Hume Lane at 8 o'clock. Ireland have named Declan Kidney as their new rugby union coach. Currently in charge of Munster, he takes over from Eddie O'Sullivan, who left the job after a disappointing World Cup and Six Nations. And the Paralympic World Cup is underway in Manchester. Over 400 athletes from 45 countries compete in athletics, swimming, cycling and basketball over the next 4 days. Today, the focus is on the basketball. Great Britain men take on the United States at 3:30 this afternoon. John Pollock, a team member from Wigan, admits that the sport is growing.
This weekend on BBC Radio Manchester, John Thompson.
You see, it's funny that people find the Daleks frightening because the eyes on the top are actually Morris Minor indicators. And, of course, we all know the arm is a sink plunger. And we hide behind the sofa, basically something that was cobbled together from being killed.
John Thompson.
What those things were that aren't quite piercings in your ear, that have just a hole. You can see through it, and apparently they're called flesh tunnels. But what's someone with one of these going to say when they're a grandfather and the grandchildren come and see me? Well, you like a biscuit? And they go, Grandad, whatever's happened to your ears? You look like a tribal chief from Papua New Guinea.
John Thompson. He thinks he's funny.
I still don't get it.
Back from 11 o'clock on Saturday at BBC Radio Manchester.
Peter in Stockport, how are you doing?
OK, thank you, Alan.
Good, what can we do for you?
I think the government have put themselves in an impossible position regarding this 10-penny tax.
I'll bet. Yes.
I mean, I realised as soon as the last budget came out, within 5 or 10 minutes, we all knew that the first 2,000 or whatever it is taxed at 10%, and those on £7,000 a year are going to suffer. And then they come out, they're trumpeting the business, oh, well, it's mostly those aged 60 to 64 whose children have left home, blah, blah, blah. But you can't, if you're going to replace, income tax is income tax, you've just got to, they've got to swallow their pride and say they got it wrong and go back to how it was before, because any other system is going to leave someone out somewhere. What about the person who's 30 years old, who hasn't got any children, chooses for one reason or another to earn 8,000 or 9,000 a year part-time? What about them? How on earth are they going to deal with it? See what I mean?
Well, yes, but that's the problem. And the reason the government is in such difficulty is that the implication is that they were perfectly happy to have a comparatively small number of poor people made a little bit poorer in order to be able to say to those who are quite well off, we're cutting your tax.
But do you honestly think that people are that stupid? Well, I mean, it's obviously come to a head now, but
What do you mean by people that... Who are the people you're wondering who may not be that stupid?
Well, how can I say... Surely when Brown arranged this a year ago, or whenever it was, that he must have... I don't know, he must think that people don't realise these things. I just can't understand it, If you're on 8,000 or 9,000,
Well, you credit him with more cynicism than... Well, I don't know what you credit him with, really. But you've got to remember, elections... There are very few dyed-in-the-wool Labour supporters who will vote Conservative at the next election.
Yeah, that's
very
true.
few.
That's true.
However, there are some people in the middle who've not yet decided which way they'll vote. General elections in this country are now decided, I read an article about this some years ago, are now decided by about 100,000 people. Those 100,000 people are middle-class, white individuals.
So what you're saying is he's not doing what is nice for the low paid, he's doing what's going to cast him votes, you think?
Not even cast him votes, more cynical than that. Your vote, and I don't know where you live, but... Okay, well, your vote counts. Your vote probably counts, because there's a possibility that the seat would change hands.
That's right.
My vote, I live in Wigan, my vote is worthless. Utterly worthless. It has no value. Whether I traipse down to the polling booth or not is a matter of complete insignificance. Next general election, the MP for my constituency will be Labour. That's for sure. So, we lot in my constituency, whatever our party, whether I'm BNP, SDP, SNP or anything else, Labour, Conservative or Lib Dem, makes no difference. No one gives a stuff about Wigan in a general election. Why? Because we all know the outcome. However, if I lived in a nice middle-class area in the Midlands, where there's a tradition of working people, I might be tempted to vote Labour because of my history. I might be tempted to vote Conservative because of my present. So they're the ones that need to be won, and they're the ones that after. And if that means that a few old codgers who are distributed about the country get stuffed, well, who cares? They'll be dead in 5 years anyway. Who cares about them? And that's what's causing Labour so much difficulty at the moment. They have been found guilty of chronic cynicism.
Well, it is.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And they're getting all that you reap. You sow that which you reap, say I. We had a debate the Saturday before the election on my Saturday morning programme. We had a debate, and we had a senior figure who wasn't standing for election, but a senior figure from each of the parties. And we had the bloke from Labour, and I put to him one of those either-or questions that I'm so good with. I enjoy so much. And that was, and there's no option, there's no third way here. Either Gordon Brown knew that he was screwing the poor to help buy boats from the rich, or he didn't know. Which was it? Did he know? In which case is a two-faced, lying, stinking skunk. Or did he not know? In which case he's a garmless prat and shouldn't be Chancellor at the time. And there was nothing else. There was nothing else. There wasn't, oh, well, he did know a bit, but he didn't know a little bit. I didn't know what he didn't. He did know, therefore he's a skunk. He didn't know, therefore he's a fool.
Yeah, right. The other two comments is, one is, if he... I'd really like a man to stand up and say, I was completely wrong and I'm going to give it all back next year, or give back the 10p rate this year. It won't happen. We know that. And the other comment I want to make is basically, I noticed a guy in Crewe yesterday who confronted Cameron with exactly the same sort of question, and he did not get a straight answer. He tried his best, but he didn't get a straight answer out of him either.
Straight answers from wiggly people don't exist.
Anyway,
politicians are wiggly people. Good to talk to you. Have a good day. Kevin in Bury. Hiya, Kevin.
Hello, Alan. It was about, you had somebody on earlier on that reminded us that we had to wait 6 months to pass our test.
Yes.
Yeah, well, there used to be a way around that.
Go on.
And what you did, you applied for your HGV Class 1, which was only a few weeks waiting left on it. So after you passed that, you could drive anything on road.
Could you?
Yeah. What it was, the waiting list to pass your test was 6 months.
I remember, it was me that mentioned it. That was back in the 70s, I think.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. But if you wanted a short route to it, go for your HGV.
I suppose that's a way forward. A little more expensive, I thought.
Well, and another thing he commented on was trainees training these people to drive.
Yes.
Yeah, but when you take your car in for a service in a garage, it's apprentices that mostly work on it. Yeah, I don't hear anybody shouting, "Hang on a minute, he's not on full rate, that lad." As long as the job's done and it's done to satisfaction, I don't see the
Well,
problem.
yes, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily agree with you that it's generally an apprentice working on it, but let us assume that's so and leave it to one side, fine. However, with the driving instructor thing, the problem here is that when you are training to be a driving instructor, you spend a good deal of your time as a trainee, and for some of that time you're supposed to have a qualified driving instructor in the back of the vehicle listening to you give lessons, and if you make any mistakes, correcting them. I was a driving instructor. Those rules applied at the time, and it never happened to me. The bloke who owned the firm said, "Let's go out, you give me a lesson as if I'm a new driver." Yeah, you'll be all right. I got my trainee licence, and I was giving driving lessons within days.
He must have thought you were competent, then,
Well, perhaps he just needed somebody to sit in the car because he'd sold the lessons. I've no idea.
Or he couldn't be bothered.
Well, it's a business. His job's to make money, not teach people to drive. I've never had any illusions about business. Business is about making money, and what they do to get that money is a bagatelle. Doesn't matter. They're about money.
Right, thank you, Alan.
Have a good day, Kevin.
Right.
0161 228 2255. Yes, indeed, you are correct. I am the BBC's head of cynicism. There's a lot of competition, though. Alan in Blakely, hi.
Hello, how are you? All right.
I'm very well, thank you.
Well, I'd like to make a point about driving instructors and people driving. Well, I think, I may be wrong, but I think there's a lot of people getting people to pass the test for them. Because I don't see any photographs. It's a well-known thing years ago. I don't see any photographs required now, is there? Or have they changed the rules a lot? Because they was paying people to pass the test for them, even though he's pretty good drivers himself. It's a terrible thing, that, wasn't it?
It was. It still goes on. We can't know how much it goes on because we only find out those that are guilty of doing it.
And it's a criminal offence, is it then?
It is, yes. There have been a couple of cases recently where one individual has sat 4 or 5 tests for other people and thus getting them through to their test. Yeah, I mean, criminal activity goes on, doesn't it?
Well, true, but I've read in the blog who got caught banged to rights. What he did, he was driving too good, and the driving instructor was suspicious, so he checked up on him. And it wasn't Joe Soap, it was Bill Brown who was taking the test, you know.
Well, that's life, you know. I mean, there are people out there who are prepared to break the rules, and the more we find, the better. But, Alan, you're absolutely right. It does exist. It does go on. And clearly, it is still going on. 0161 228 2255. Peter in Northern Moor. Hi, Peter.
Hello there, Alan. How are you?
I'm very well.
Cheers. What it is, I'm just curious. Now, Lady Diane and her boyfriend never wore seatbelts, right?
Yes.
The driver, the security man, wore a seatbelt.
Correct.
The driver did not wear one, and they were all killed.
Correct.
Now, I'm just curious. I noticed Philip and the Queen got in their car and drove off. No seatbelts.
Okay.
And I noticed on the other day, was in the paper, of Fergie, she was well and truly missed and blessed, right? No seatbelt. Are they exempt?
No. Well, Her Majesty the Queen, I can't answer for her. I don't know what... I think technically, I mean, others, constitutional lawyers, I'm sure will correct me, but technically it's probably impossible for Her Majesty the Queen to commit a criminal offence.
Yeah.
Because she is the titular head of criminality, if you like, of the criminal law. So she can't breach her own peace. So it's probably impossible in her part. But I know not about the rest of them. Well, certainly the minor members of the royal family are not exempt, and I suspect that Philip isn't either.
Yeah. Oh, thanks very much, Alan.
All right. The only people exempt are police officers, firefighters, taxi drivers and milkmen, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, listen to that fellow about passing his Class 1 heavy goods. He said he can drive anything. Well, he can't. He can't drive a motorbike. He can't drive a public service vehicle.
No, indeed. But what he meant was it would enable you to have a licence to drive an ordinary car.
Oh, that's correct.
He was saying that what it was, I mentioned that in the 70s you used to have to wait up to 6 months for your driving test. There was a huge waiting list. And he said what you could do instead, if you didn't want to wait the 6 months, get your heavy goods licence, Class 1, which was a lot quicker to get. You could get a test next week, and if you pass that, you're then entitled to drive the car.
Yeah, I know.
Clever, if expensive.
Yeah, I'm an ex-fund business lorry driver, Alan, and you get these young lads, 21 and 22, passing the heavy goods licence. They go belting on the motorway, 42 ton on the back. What experience have they got? Nothing.
Well, they all have to get their experience somewhere. I mean, I suppose in the interim, if a person was 40 years of age and passed their test, they'd be older, but they wouldn't have any experience, would they?
No, it's true.
So the age isn't the thing. But good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And I do like the email from James, who said, Alan, me old mate, any jobs are going at Radio Manchester. Cheers, James Whale. Now, that would have been good, and I could have been tricked by that, except you misspelt James's name. So hard luck. But it was a nice try. He's got a job anyway, and I, for one, will be watching him sell jewellery. How the mighty have fallen. I'll see you tomorrow. Do you want to buy a watch? Ta-da now.
Can you swap a full 8 hours for a 2-minute micro nap? Find out with me, Heather Stott, tomorrow morning from